Thursday night or, I don't know, late afternoon, early evening on the West Coast. And this is Real Monsters. I'm the host, SK Barrett, and my co host, the lovely and talented Wes Hobrick.
Hello, hello, hello.
How are things in the Midwest?
Oh, not too bad. I think we might have a storm blowing in, but
Ah,
we actually do have a entry on our news that's directly relevant to where I live for today
all right.
too. Unfortunately,
Well, this week in crime history, then.
dun dun dun. September 5th, 1977. There's a new trial for Michael Stone. He killed Leah and Megan Russell with a hammer in England. Was found guilty. Next one's a bit more interesting. September 6th, 1924, John Dillinger commits his first crime when he robs a grocery store.
Mm. Dillinger's the one who famously said he robbed banks because that's where they keep the money.
Public enemy number one, indeed. Killed in Chicago in front of the Biograph Theater, too. Um, 9/7/2007, Madeline McCann's mother is named a suspect in her daughter's disappearance. That got nasty after that. Man,
Yeah,
the media drug her through the mud. In fact, I think she won a slander lawsuit against them.
yeah, that was a mess, wasn't it?
Yep. Although, granted, it's a lot easier to win that sort of thing in England than it is in the United States. So that's where she filed it. But
Gotcha.
September 8th, 1888, Jack the Ripper kills his second victim, Annie Chapman. September 9th, 1944, the acid bath murderer John Haig dissolves his first.
Oh, that guy.
I guess it was his boss that he killed and put in a vat of
Now,
acid.
was he Chicago?
I think so.
Something like that, right?
Yeah,
This
I
is the
thought he
guy.
was.
This is the motherfucker who framed a tenant in his own building. He rented rooms like a boarding house, and he framed one of the tenants, his own fucking tenants, for one of the murders, and the guy got hung over it.
Damn,
We got to
man,
do
that
that guy.
sucks. Yeah, we definitely need to. And if for no other reason than just the acid bath part of that too.
Right.
Pretty
Not
unique,
many
but
people get away with framing up other people to the point of execution.
no, they don't. But yeah, September 10th, 1951, mob boss Salvatore Miranzo is shot and stabbed to death in New York City by assassins hired by Lucky Luciano.
Eh, man, those Italians, man.
Those Sicilians, man.
And
Um,
I have a lot of Italian connections, including my ex-wife and
ooh,
my ex mother-in-law's family, and yeah, those people, man, I love them to death. They can be pretty mean.
yeah, yeah. When you cross them, man,
Yeah.
they'll get you. Uh, September 11th, 1978, Russian defector Georgy Markov is killed by a poison-tipped umbrella
Yes.
in London.
A total, Jean Le Carre move, right?
Oh yeah,
I mean, just walking down the street, he gets stabbed by a poison-tipped umbrella and dies. That's
yep.
just crazy shit, man.
By the KGB, and it sets
Yeah.
the precedent for what would happen. What was that? 2 years ago, when they tried to poison the Russian defectors over there. So they found like poison in a house somewhere, a really rare poison.
I missed that.
It was pretty big for, I want to say, a couple weeks, where it got a couple people really sick, and it might have even killed one or two. Um, I can't totally remember, but
Mm.
I'll have to see if I can dredge up some info about it later. Couple news items. First one was Robert Camus, 27, charged with murdering his girlfriend after rapping about doing that in a video online.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Is it just me or are criminals getting stupider?
No, we're just more aware of them.
I guess so.
I
But,
mean, there was a case back in the 80s where a guy robbed a bank using his own deposit slip
oh, wow.
to write the
You know,
note.
that kind of relates to another news item. Pennsylvania couple faced charges after spending over $100,000 accidentally deposited in their bank account. I must have been a rounding error or something, but
Yeah.
yeah, it got in there and they spent it. Let's see. A
Yeah.
mother,
There's a common misperception that the bank makes a mistake like that. You
it
know,
does not end up in your favor.
no,
Nope.
they've been
Um,
very good about writing all the laws around that shit, so you don't think that you're gonna get away with it.
no, not at all. But see another. A mother and her boyfriend were charged in Houston with corpse tampering after their
What?
five after their 5-year old daughter was discovered decomposing in a closet. I guess they kept it at corpse tampering because their story was that they were bathing the child and some chemical got into the water and killed her. It was like some cleaner or something. Um,
And
they decided, apparently, to put her in a closet instead of calling the authorities. Um, it is if you believe their story.
yeah, I don't know. It's kind of smelly story.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We'll see where
But
those
I mean,
charges go.
but I mean, it's not exactly. I don't know. Keeping a corpse around the house is just not what smart thinking. I don't know.
Not at all. But the one that was related to where I live, there's a chaplain who got 26 years on nursing home sex crimes and also abusing his relatives. I guess his older relatives. Just disgusting.
Jesus.
Yeah, but they got him for 26 years combined on all those
Is
charges.
he Catholic?
No, this guy was a Protestant
Mm.
reverend. I'm not sure what denomination specifically, but yeah,
So
actually,
yeah, but I'm just saying he didn't have celibacy to blame.
oh no, not at all. Yeah, nope, no celibacy with that. Um,
Just
you know,
busted.
about 2 hours before we went on the air, this next one actually got off on these charges, but Ohio cheerleader allegedly sends her mother a text celebrating her slimmer figure after giving birth and burying her infant. She just got off on charges for murder for that literally 2 hours before we
She got
went on.
off
Yes,
for
found
what?
not guilty.
Insanity plea?
I guess, they bought her story that she delivered the baby stillborn and just buried it because she didn't know what to do.
Well,
Um,
if yeah, I mean, if they did the autopsy, then okay,
yeah, if they find anything in the lungs,
right.
they're going to know. But yeah, there's a lot of people who are feeling that this was a pretty big miscarriage of justice. And from what
Well,
I
I
know,
I gotta trust the coroner on this, the medical examiner.
well, I'm not sure what the coroner said about that. All I know is that she was found not guilty.
Mm.
I could look that up though, but Yeah, and a lot of people are just with that, man. Um, and let's see, the last item that I have, Abel Sodero, who stabbed a few kids at his Bronx, New York high school, got only 14 years for a murder charge. That was he blamed anti-gay bullying for why he did what he did.
But he didn't kill any of the bullies, and from what I read, and none of the um, people he did kill were bullying him.
Yeah, which kind of makes you
That's
wonder how
kind of a
that
tough
14
defense.
years. Yeah, 14 years is pretty lenient for what he did, I think, relatively. But yeah, that is all I have for the news for now.
Cool. Very nice. All right. Who's this motherfucker we're talking about this week?
Well, he's probably one of the tamer ones if you consider depravity of what he did compared to, all the others that we cover on this show. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and he is the only one as well that we're going to talk about who had both a Billy Joel lyric attributed directly to him and a song by Bruce Springsteen.
And at
Um,
least three movies.
yes, absolutely. Charles Starkweather. He
Wow.
was really the first spree killer to capture the attention of the media, too, considering this happened in, well, 1957 into 1958.
What
But,
about Bonnie and Clyde?
you know, yeah, I
But
mean, they captured,
I mean, maybe Starkweather was more about the killing, and Bonnie and Clyde were more about the robbing.
I think that was part of it. And also the fact that TVs were just starting to, pop up in
Yeah.
American households around the time of Charlie and his girlfriend Carol Ann Fugate when they did their crime spree. But yeah, the Billy Joel lyrics, Starkweather Homicide, inspired the title for this show, is from We Didn't Start the Fire. I was so quizzing myself on that song before we went on. I used to be able to remember all the lyrics in it, but yeah, it didn't fare so well this time around.
So which part of it is inspired by Starkweather?
The lyric Starkweather Homicide in there. It's
There it is. Sure enough. I don't think I
yep,
ever really heard that before.
yep. And I can't
I
remember
remember
what comes
Children of
before it.
Thalidomide.
Children of Thalidomide, yep. Starkweather Homicide, and then with Springsteen, it was the song Nebraska. Is all about Charlie Starkweather. Um, it's actually written from his first person point of view, the whole thing. So Bruce is a pretty good storyteller. I like him
Yeah.
as a musician, but yeah, I mean, Charles Starkweather, getting into his bio, born in 1938, Lincoln, Nebraska, and his family, they're relatively poor. Um, they're not so poor that he and his seven siblings weren't eating, but they're pretty poor. And his mother actually was the driving force in financially supporting them. I don't know why his dad was more. He worked sporadically, never really had a job that he held for very long. So it was mostly the mom that supported them. And Charlie, from a rather young age, was relatively bow legged. He was known for that. I didn't see why. Did you see why he was bow legged? Was it polio?
No, it can be. I had one of my best buddies in junior high was bow-legged, and it's just um, in his case, it was just a growth thing where the Um,
Oh,
outside of the
uh-huh.
bones grew faster than the inside of the like shin bones.
Oh, wow.
And
Eh,
yeah, he went through some very painful surgeries where they put um, basically clamps in the bones um, to prevent the outsides of the bones from stretching so far, and so giving the insides a chance to catch up
Oh, wow.
over the course of several
Interesting.
years.
Yeah, I wonder what the reason was with Starkweather. Interesting,
Uh,
though.
so could have been a nutritional thing.
Yeah, could have been that, or. But at any rate, he was rather ashamed of his poverty for quite some time, although he did a couple of times describe his childhood as idyllic, was his word, in fact.
Hmm.
But he also had horrible eyesight. He was horribly nearsighted. In fact, he had it so bad that it was impairing his ability to read when he was finally went to school. So a lot of the teachers there thought that he was, low IQ, but he actually had an average IQ. Um, so
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you can't see what everybody, I mean, yeah, if you can't see the board or the books or shit, you know, you hear people talking about stuff that makes no sense to you.
yeah, and absolutely. It's just, man, that makes me have some pity on him that he had to go through that. But yeah, it was around the time that he started school that he was ruthlessly bullied for all these different things. And I guess he also had a speech impediment to top it all off.
Oh man.
Um, so, but yeah,
So
going through those school age years, he
so
started to
let's
get
see.
mean.
Bow-legged, nearsighted,
Yep,
um, speech impediment, and poverty.
yep. On top of it, and then prone to fighting at his school. Um,
Yeah.
there was another interesting thing in my digging into him. There was a couple of people who described a particular verbal battle that he had with his father in his late teens. They didn't get very specific on it, but they said that it left him feeling humiliated, was the constant theme with it.
Hmm.
And a lot of these people who were direct, close friends of his, kind of charted his personality going downhill from that.
Mm.
It, that he got, more violent, more angry with everybody. But yeah, it was around when he turned 18. He took a job as a garbage man in Lincoln, Nebraska, and he meets 13-year-old Carol Ann Fugate, who comes from a poorer family as well. They get to know each other, and I think it's important here to look at the sort of connection that they forged initially. Starkweather is a guy who is used to being constantly rejected for all those things that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Carol Ann was really the first person to sort of accept him for who he was. So that made the relationship that they had very, very important in his mind.
Man, I can't even begin to express how much I understand that concept.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, with my first girlfriend and that she came from a, a really pretty stable family and
Mm-hmm.
um and was just, everybody was just really accepting of me there, to a degree that I never got at home. And
Mm-hmm.
it's quite a um, transformational experience.
It's powerful, most
Yeah.
definitely. Uh, yes, so they hang around for about a year together. Um, and Starkweather finally decides, you know what? I want to marry this girl. So one day in January of 1958, he goes out to the Fugate household and asks her stepdad, Marion was his name, for her hand in marriage. And, he kind of freaks out about that because Starkweather, he has the reputation of being from the wrong side of the tracks, to put it as politely as you could with that. Um,
Right.
and he says no, and they apparently get into a heated argument, and Starkweather grabs the 22 rifle he has and shoots him.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah, yeah. And this is before Carol Ann is at home that day. But yeah, he shoots the stepfather, and then he turns around and he takes the 22 to the mother as well. And apparently, after this, he grabs a knife and stabs both of them. And while all this is going on, the 2-year-old sister of Carol Ann, her name was Betty Jean, is apparently crying. So what's Starkweather do? He
Oh,
takes the knife and he throws it at her throat.
Jesus.
Yeah, nicking her and making her bleed. But she is still alive and still making a lot of noise there. So he takes the butt of that rifle and beats her to death. And then he returns back
That's
to the mom and dad and
okay.
stabs them several more times.
That's
So,
just that's just oh, you don't know. You don't kill children. That's
no.
a I mean, you, we'll even joke about killings and murders and serial killers and bullshit like that. But kids are really off limits, and it it's still a very strong um, genetic reaction that everybody pretty much has to that idea.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that killing Betty Jean definitely ratchets up Starkweather's depravity
Yeah,
in terms of how depraved
because
his
it was not
actions are.
necessary, right?
No, not at all.
He's a
I mean, he
two-year-old.
could, yeah. I mean, he could have taken the 2-year-old up to, let's say the second floor of the house and locked her in a room,
Yeah,
or
or
something like
just
that.
left her.
Yeah, or just left her and let her escape, even
Yeah.
run somewhere. He did not have to do that. But yeah, Carol gets home and she sees all this. And Starkweather, in the meantime, takes the bodies. He puts Marion in the chicken coop under newspapers. He puts Velda, the mother, in a disused outhouse. And then he puts Betty Jean in a box outside.
Wow.
And all the while, apparently, Carol Ann is just sitting inside the house watching TV.
Oh, she was there
Yeah, she was there when he
when he moved the
was dumping
bodies.
the bodies. Yeah,
Okay. So she
she
came.
was not there for the actual killings, though.
All right. So she was clearly not freaked out
No,
by this move.
no, she wasn't. She didn't. She wasn't visibly freaked. Or I
Yeah.
suppose you could make the argument that maybe she was frozen in shock, but I don't know. I think we do see that theme of her maybe being a little bit more malevolent than she lets on.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really the big question. And I would ask anybody who's listening too, by the time we get to the end of this, what do you think about Carol Ann? Was she a hostage or was she a willing participant? Because that is a very vital question
Right.
throughout this.
Right.
Um, but yeah, they do all this and they pin a note on the front door of the Fugate house. I was just looking for the verbatim of it, but the message said basically, everybody's sick with the flu, come back later.
Buying
So,
time.
yeah, yeah, that's what Carol Ann does. And this is surprisingly effective because throughout, the first person that shows up is her older sister, asking if everybody's okay. And later on with that, Carol Ann would relate that Starkweather was apparently standing out of sight behind the door with his rifle
Oh,
in
they
case.
hadn't left yet.
Oh no, they were still at the house. They were at the house for 6 days after the killing.
What?
Yep. With those bodies laying around, they were at that house for 6 days, watching TV and having sex.
Not skedaddling out of there.
Nope, not
Well,
yet.
wow, that's wild.
But yeah, her older sister shows up,
I said
and
skedaddle.
that's a Nebraska word. So yeah, her older sister, she apparently bought this, but she goes home and is talking to her husband about it after. And I guess she thought that something was off with the whole episode because he ends up calling the cops about it. And
Okay.
so after this, you get two police showing up at the door of the Fugate residence, and they also apparently buy it that everybody's sick because they don't do anything at this
Wow.
point.
And are the kids still in the house?
Yeah, yeah, they're still there. Starkweather and Fugate are still there.
Well, I gotta say, speaking personally, if I was in a situation like that, which I wouldn't be, but if I was in a situation where I was in a house and people were coming around knocking on the door, I'd be gone after the first person showed up. At the
Yeah,
latest, I'd be, all right, people are, fine, the note's there. That'll buy some time. Let's get out of here. But I'm not hanging around for more people to come knocking on the door.
that's a good. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think I would have been either. Mr. Deadman asks a good question. I guess they adjusted to the smell. I wonder if, remember, they hid the bodies in a chicken coop and in a disused outhouse. I wonder if the smell of shit covered it up.
Well, in the house, the blood would have started to rot, unless they cleaned up a little bit, but it seems unlikely.
They actually did clean up a little bit,
Okay.
from what I was reading. But yeah, what's more interesting about this here, even after these two cops show up, they don't leave.
Wow.
Like I said, the cops didn't do anything. So they go back to the station, and Fugate's grandmother shows up at the house next. She apparently also buys that everybody's sick.
Man, world's most effective note.
I guess.
Jesus.
But apparently, she also thought that something was off with it because she also called the cops. And when they get this second report, is when they go back to the house, and Fugate and Starkweather are gone by now, and the police do a proper search of the premises, and they find the three victims.
Hmm.
So the next place that they go to is to the ranch of August Meyer, who is a 70-year-old bachelor farmer, basically. And Starkweather had apparently been to this guy's place a number of times to hunt with him, with his father and everything. And they go there, and apparently, when Meyer meets them on his front porch, the first thing that Starkweather does is he takes the shotgun that he took from the Fugate house to Meyer's head. One shot, he's down.
No discussion, no conversation, just boom.
Nothing. Just boom,
Wow.
right then and there. And the next thing that they do, they go in and they rob his house. They take about $100 worth of
Which
cash.
which was a lot of money.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Back then. Um,
Remember, so this was 58,
ni-
59?
1958, January 58.
Yeah, so gas would have been like under 20 cents a gallon.
Hmm. They swipe that from him and they take his car. And they get going with it. They get a little bit of a distance from there, and the car gets stuck in the mud, which I
Oh,
guess kind of, sucks for them. But um, what they find themselves doing after that is trying to thumb a ride. Hitchhiking was
I think we
big.
have the image of the stuck car.
Yes, we do. I believe that's it.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
And so they come along, a couple who are roughly about their age, Robert Colson and his fiance. And they get in the car with them and they hijack it basically. And they take them back to the farm after that. And they end up shooting both of them basically.
So they
And
go they go back to where they sh took the shotgun to the one guy. The
yeah,
house
which I thought was kind of weird. I'm not sure why they
yeah.
went back
Why
there,
backtrack?
but yeah, I mean, they end up doing that. And this is where you really start to see more of Starkweather's rage, in my opinion, too. Because he ends up shooting Colson in the head 6 times with a rifle.
Jesus.
Yeah. I could almost see that being sort of accidental overkill with a pistol, but
Right,
with a rifle,
especially if it's like a bolt action, which it most likely was.
yeah, absolutely. 6 times in the head. And then they also shoot his fiance, Carol King, and she also has quite a few stab wounds that ended up killing her.
Mm,
And the interesting thing there, they also found extensive sexual mutilation on her body, particularly around in her groin
really?
from the knife. Yeah. And after they are caught, Starkweather says that that was Carol Ann who mutilated her. And I'm
Mm,
kind of inclined to believe him on that
yeah.
for reasons we'll get into, but
Well,
also
for one,
because,
it's like, well, you know, why put that on her of all things?
mhm, yeah, yeah, why go out of your way to say, oh, yeah, she did that part of it?
Right. It wasn't
Uh,
going to make things any better for him.
no, not at all. Not at all. And for the other reason that you didn't see it on any of them that we know he killed, no sexual mutilation.
Right.
Would have been a first for him. But yeah, so they're in the couple's car. And the next thing that they decide that they're going to do is drive into the more wealthy neighborhoods of Lincoln and raise a little hell. So,
Oh,
another thing about Starkweather, he really identified with James Dean, the actor, as I'm sure a lot of boys did back then. They
right.
wanted to be, James Dean. But Starkweather, he had almost a psychotically obsessive devotion to James Dean, I'd say, to where he would try to get it down to the hair, the wardrobe, even how he smoked his cigarettes was totally how James Dean would do it.
Interesting.
And
And
yeah,
Dean was in real life wasn't the cool dude he played in the movies. He was kind of a nerd.
yeah, he was a very good student for
Yeah.
one.
And he wore glasses.
Yep. Yeah, in Starkweather, he wanted to be James Dean for all those reasons. And yeah, he sought to imitate him down to the very last detail. But I think another big part of that was the first time that Starkweather killed, it, I would argue, is not a canonical part of the spree that we're talking about now. of the spree with
Really?
few. Um, the first time Starkweather killed was actually a gas station attendant in December of 1957.
Oh, so preceding this.
Yes,
Oh,
a guy by the name of, I believe it was Robert Colson in Lincoln. So he goes and he robs him at a gas station and he kidnaps him, takes him in the car he's driving to some secluded place and blows him away with a shotgun. One shotgun blast to the head.
that'll do it.
It's kind of interesting that he did that at all because he really didn't need to. I
Yeah.
mean, Starkweather, he had a bandana on. He disguised himself when he robbed him. So you can't make the argument that he was trying to eliminate a witness with that. Um, so it's really a good
Y-
question as to why he killed him.
You know, from what I've read and heard here, it's I get the feeling. Now he totally did. He had a lot of rage at people from being humiliated and bullied, and
He did.
it's entirely possible that he would take just imagine somebody giving him offense when they hadn't done anything at all.
That's a good point. And I would definitely agree with that. But then I would ask, wouldn't there need to be some sort of trigger that brings him to that level at that
Well,
time?
it could be such a small insignificant thing that nobody would even realize they were doing it.
You know,
You
I mean,
know,
this is true.
just a look or a shrug or a smirk or who knows what, right?
You make a very good point there, and I guess it gets kind of hard to remember that it can be small too,
Yeah,
when you consider that the trigger for this spree was arguably big. When he
right.
was rejected by the parents. Um,
But what?
but yeah,
But then again, yeah, yeah, that was a big thing. That was a big thing. But why kill the? Why go so overboard with the couple whose car they stole?
yeah, yeah. That's another good question. I mean, 6 shots to the head is overkill by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, and by this time, when they're going into the richer neighborhoods of Lincoln, there's quite a lot of media surrounding this. I mean, they're looking all over for Starkweather and Fugate, and they're not assuming at the time that she is a co-conspirator. They're
right.
just assuming that it's a hostage thing and it's all just him. Um,
And it makes sense because the rest of the family's dead that was at the
yeah.
house.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
right.
And remember the ages too. She's only 14. He's 19.
Oh,
So
I thought she was 18.
no, 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 no. She's 14
Well,
throughout all this.
whoa. No
Yeah.
wonder they
Sorry, I
said
thought I made
no.
that clear. Um, yeah. I mean,
I
but
see. I misread that. He was 18, she was 13. Right. Well, no
yeah.
wonder the parents said no.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. You have that factor too. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of people getting freaked out about this at the time because it seems so random and pointless. And, they really didn't have a point of reference for a spree killing at the time.
Right.
I mean, even today, when you look at Charles Starkweather and Carol Ann Fugate, there's a lot of so called experts on this who call Starkweather a serial killer.
Well, that's wrong.
Yeah, he was not a serial killer.
No.
I mean, I can understand some people calling him a mass killer, even though that's also
That's
technically wrong.
that's not right either because they're scattered over various locations.
Yes, that's the thing. The criteria for mass has to be four or more at a single location. That's the criteria that the FBI uses to define it. And
Yeah, and he didn't do that. He moved around.
Right. Spree, the definition that they use, which is what applies to Starkweather, is two or more at two or more locations. So, yeah, I mean, I just couldn't believe that when I was looking through sources that there's some people who say that they are educated on this, but then call him a serial killer. Um, but yeah, by the
No.
time they
I mean,
are
I mean, what was the duration of this entire spree?
8 days,
Right. So there's no time for a cooling off period. So it fails on that right off the bat.
absolutely. Yeah, there was none at all with that. Um, so they make their way there, and a lot of these people in these areas, Starkweather was familiar with his job as a garbage man. And apparently, there was an interesting anecdote about this. He was rather fond of yelling, "Go to hell," to complete strangers when he was doing their trash. So,
So
yeah,
very rather unpleasant sort of fellow.
yep. Yeah, not the most likable guy. But they come across the home of a oil executive
Mm.
in Lincoln that was by the last name of Ward. And the first thing that they do is they go in and they tie up the maid and Ward's wife on the upper floor of the house and go through and ransack and steal as much as they can um, throughout this. And that's another interesting thing there. They did actually have an overriding plan of what they were going to do if they could escape the police throughout this.
Oh yeah.
And that was their first thing that they wanted to do was go to California, where they thought that they were going to live high on the hog from the proceeds of all this crime.
Ah.
Um, but then that
Yes.
plan kind of got tweaked to where they wanted to go live with Starkweather's brother, who was in the state of Washington out there.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yep.
Yeah, all that loot from all their crime doing.
Well, I mean, it's also, I guess, good to keep in mind here that these are kids. There's going
Yeah.
to be a degree of naivete with that. But yes, so when Mr. Ward came home for the day, he basically didn't even have enough time to take his coat off when Starkweather shot him in the head.
Yeah.
And then they ended up also killing the maid and the wife. And then they took Mr. Ward's Packard from there and started driving towards Wyoming, towards that border, which is actually where they get the term Badlands from with the movie that was inspired by Starkweather. 1973's Badlands with Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek.
Right.
Very good film. If you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend checking it
Been
out.
a long time. I really should see it again.
It plays on occasion on Turner Classic Movies. In fact, that's where I last saw it. But it does a lot more towards, I guess you could say, historical accuracy with it than the other movies that were inspired by Starkweather and Fugate. But yes, so they take the car and they head towards Wyoming, towards the border. And they get there, and Starkweather decides, you know what, the Packard's too hot. We got to dump it. So
Okay.
they do that, and they find a traveling shoe salesman
I'm gonna
on the
I'm gonna
side of the road.
I'm gonna put the Badlands slideshow up while you're talking.
Sure. Yeah, that's would be great. Yeah, they find this poor guy on the side of the road, and this is again where you see the overkill with Starkweather. He shoots him 9 times in the head
Wow.
with a rifle again. 9 times in the head. I couldn't get over that. And they take his car, and in the meantime, with this, there's a guy who works for a mineral service nearby. I think he might have even been a geologist. He's a younger guy in his 20s,
Okay.
and he sees all this going on the side of the road. And he comes up there thinking that, these people might need some help. So what's he do? He ends up wrestling with Starkweather to try to
Oh,
get the rifle from him.
oh my.
Yeah. And while all this is happening, a deputy pulls over after them. And this is where Carol Ann kind of throws his ass under the bus totally. What's the first thing that she does when the deputy comes up?
Cries for
She
help.
runs. Yeah, exactly. She runs up to him and says, "I'm a hostage of Charles Starkweather. He's trying to kill me." But,
Clever girl.
I guess so with that. But yeah, he somehow manages to get back into the car. He guns it going about 110 down the highway. There's a bit of a car chase, and after that, he's kind of uneventfully caught. He didn't. A lot of spree murders and mass murderers like to do suicide by their own hand,
Or
and they often do
suicide by cop. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Not so with Starkweather. He went along peaceably after they caught him there.
So how far did they get from Lincoln?
Oh, I would have to look that up. The miles from Lincoln to roughly about Douglas, Wyoming.
Oh, they did get to Wyoming. So
Yeah. Oh,
that
yeah. They got over the border.
okay. That's like pretty much clear across Nebraska and into, a good part of Wyoming,
Mm-hmm.
almost
And
to Casper.
it is about an 8-hour drive with the interstates that exist now.
Yeah.
I-80 West will take you there. About 558.1 miles for
Okay.
that. So, yeah,
So
I mean, they got that far.
yeah.
And, after that, they get to the trial, which was very interesting in and of itself. The state didn't believe that Carol Ann was a hostage. They thought she was a willing accomplice throughout this.
Yeah. Yeah, I could be persuaded on along those lines for sure.
Well, and, it didn't help so much with that Starkweather, from when they caught him, said she was a hostage too, up until she called him a murderer.
Oh,
Yeah. Then he started getting a clue and saying, hell no. In fact, he, in addition to the sexual mutilation of Carol King
yeah.
that we were talking about,
Yeah.
he pinned 2 of the killings directly on her. He said that
Really?
she killed 2 of the women. And with that, I would assume the Wards, Mrs. Ward and the maid. Um,
That would, I think, be consistent with that mutilation.
yeah, and one would think so, but yeah, Starkweather, for his part, they tried him separately, and Starkweather, for his part, said, "Hey, every person I killed was self-defense." Yeah, bullshit, buddy. Self-defense
um,
my ass. Those
yeah,
2-year-olds are just killer, man.
right.
Ugh. But
The tied up women.
yeah, well, and the tied-up men too,
Yeah.
man. And Fugate, for her part, said that because Starkweather was so brutal, my only option was to obey him. She ended up getting charged with only 1 count of murder, and it was murder in the commission of a robbery was the technical charge.
Mm.
And she was actually the youngest female in United States history to be charged with that, which is equivalent to murder 1 with the larger laws.
And I'm assuming tried as an adult.
Yeah, they did try her as an adult, although it's kind of interesting with a lot of that too, because of her age. when she got her sentence of life in prison, she could not be housed in general population for the first 8 months of her stay.
Oh,
Yeah. So they kept her in solitary confinement for 8 months. But yeah, she was ultimately paroled in 1977. They considered her completely rehabilitated. And from then on, she stuck to that story that she was totally innocent. And Starkweather, of course, he got the death penalty.
yeah.
They killed him in the electric chair on June 25th, 1959. Only took 4 minutes.
Only.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, it is so weird. But getting into the other side of this, and that was some of the other things that were inspired by Starkweather and Fugate.
Yeah.
There were two other movies in addition to Badlands. The first one was the Quentin Tarantino written and Tony Scott directed True Romance with Patricia Arquette and Christian Slater, I think.
Yes, I've seen that.
Mm-hmm. Was the other one in that. And then the second one was Oliver Stone's
Much more
Na-
well-known film,
Natural Born Killers.
which we don't
And
have a
that,
we don't have the poster for that.
oh crap, I should have grabbed that.
That's
I'm
all right.
sorry.
Everyone
But
knows Natural Born Killers.
yeah, Mickey and Mallory. I think we do have a picture of them though.
Yeah.
And the where this gets even more eventful after it was a murder that was committed as, I guess you could call it, a copycat of the movie or inspired by the movie. And that was by Sarah Edmondson and Benjamin James Darras, both 18 years old in 1950 or 1995. I'm sorry. They were at their family's cabin, evidently dropping a lot of acid, having sex, and watching the movie repeatedly.
Mm.
And they decide they're going to go on a crime spree, just like Mickey and Mallory, and just like Starkweather and Fugate. And they tell their family that they're going to a Grateful Dead concert, but that isn't true at all. Um, but what's triply interesting with this
There's the couple.
is,
There's the lovely couple.
oh yeah, I got their mugshots in there, I think. Yep, that is it. But one thing that's really interesting about Sarah Edmondson is her family history. They're both from Oklahoma, by the way.
Okay.
And her father is a prominent judge in Oklahoma.
Is that this guy?
No, that guy is their victim, which
Okay.
we'll get to him in just a second. And she is also the niece of the state attorney general at the time in Oklahoma.
Oh, man, no wonder she turned to killing.
Well, yeah, I mean they didn't have, their scandals up until this, the Edmondson family, although they were often compared to the Kennedys of Oklahoma. Um, but yeah, they go on this crime spree and they end up ultimately in Ponchatoula, Louisiana, and Hernando, Mississippi. And
What's interesting is they didn't start with the family who were right there.
yeah, that is kind of a break from both the movie and Starkweather and Fugate,
Yeah.
definitely. But yeah, I mean, even considering Sarah's history, she went bad, but there was nothing recent about it. This is digging a little bit deeper from a Washington Post article. When she hit puberty, her parents say, everything inside her seemed to rot and warp. From her early teens, she was a liar and a drug abuser. She had protracted bouts of near suicidal depression. Her parents were not unheedful of her troubles, or neglectful or uncaring. They took her into a psych treatment center when she was 13. They did what they could for her until there seemed to be not much more that they could do.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, they get in. The Benjamin Darris's
I gotta
wife.
say that sounds fairly typical for a teenage girl.
Well, this is true.
Having raised two,
Probably doubly so if you come from a powerful family.
right?
Uh, yeah, but they drive from Tahlequah, Oklahoma, to Ponchatoula and Hernando. 2 weeks before this, Sarah's parents were angry and frightened because they knew she had taken a handgun, a 38, from the family's weekend cabin. They were afraid she was suicidal and might harm herself.
Hmm.
Um, so they end up driving through Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida, and Oklahoma. Let's see.
How old? Remind me, how old were these crazy kids?
Both of them were 18.
Oh, just right.
They, they when they got to Louisiana around March 8th of 95, they decided that they needed money, so they go into the Time Saver convenience store. And that is where Patsy Byers is working as a clerk at the time. Edmondson, she goes in there and she shoots Patsy Byers.
Ooh.
Doesn't doesn't kill her, but turns her into a permanent quadriplegic. And she says as she's standing over her body, going through the cash register, "Are you dead yet?" "No." "How do you open this?" So,
Wow.
yeah. And then after this, they head towards Hernando, Mississippi, 300 miles north of Ponchatoula on I-55. Let's see. At the time there was a cotton gin operator by the name of William Savage, age 58, who was ultimately shot in his office by Benjamin. And he did die. They took about $100 and credit cards from him when they went through there.
So what's interesting here so far is that this started off from an acid trip.
Yep.
Now
An
they could
acid
have
trip
taken,
in a
it could
movie.
have been an extended acid trip, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, from a single dose can run 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
But let's say they kept the party going for, I don't know, 8 or 12 hours even. But still,
Wow.
but I mean, let's just hypothetically, and then they decide they're gonna go do this shit. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but then they go and drive to fucking Mississippi.
Yeah.
The
Well,
trips,
ultimately, Florida.
right? But I mean, so you know, the LSD trip is over,
Yep.
and they're still going through with it.
Yeah. I mean, as far as I could tell, there's no evidence that they had further acid after that.
Yeah, but
They
the,
didn't keep dropping.
even if they, I don't know, something about this is, it's weird that they could make that choice under the influence and then stick with it when in
Well,
when they're, more or less sober. That's pretty wild.
yeah, definitely. Um, let's see. Oh, police believe that the murder of Savage went down as so. That the assailant, Darris, first opened the aluminum store door and then the white wooden door, surprising Savage, who was working at his desk. He wouldn't have seen anyone coming. The room's only window is filled by an air conditioner. There were no signs of a struggle. It appears Savage had time only to stand up and look at his killer, who fired 2 shots. The first glanced off Savage's shoulder, the second hit him directly in the face, killing him. He fell forward. The killer then slipped Savage's wallet from his pocket and took his money and credit cards and fled, driving through town and getting back on the interstate.
Mm.
It was interestingly, they were caught through all this sometime later by an ex-girl or an ex-boyfriend of Edmondson's. He was I don't know how the conversation got onto this, but the guy was apparently pulled over for speeding and he fingered her for these crimes.
What?
Yeah, I don't know how it got to that. From being pulled over to saying, "Hey, my ex turned somebody into a quadriplegic."
Trying to get out of a speeding ticket?
I have no idea, but yeah, at any rate, the FBI come to the parents' house to talk to her about it, and she ultimately fingers Darris for the murder.
Hmm.
Fingered, figuratively speaking, Mr. Deadman, not literally.
Pointed the finger at.
But yeah, interestingly, after this story does not end yet. Interestingly, after this, because Mr. Savage has a rather powerful friend whom you might know because he's written a few books. I think a few movies too.
Dr. Seuss.
Well, John Grisham.
Oh. Who happens to know a thing or two about the law, in fact.
Yep, being a lawyer himself.
Right.
For whatever reason, he decides that because these killers said that natural born killers was a factor in this murder and this attempted murder, that, hey, I'm going to go sue Oliver Stone under a product liability law because his movie made them do it.
You know, I right off the bat, I gotta say, I have a lot of admiration for Grisham and enjoy many of his books a great deal, and the movies made from him mostly, except for a stupid one done by Sidney Pollack.
Yeah.
But this is bullshit.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I I don't know how he even thought he had uh, footing to stand on for that.
Or standing to stand on.
Yeah,
Why did he get to bring a suit?
I mean that's a good question. I think he was acting as the family's attorney, perhaps.
Hmm.
And I would be more than willing to bet he talked them in to filing that suit against Oliver Stone and Warner Brothers too, which Warner Brothers ultimately relinquished its royalties in Natural Born Killers, including the more brutal director's cut. But yeah,
Relinquish them to who?
relinquished their rights to the royalties. So I'm sure they probably sold it to another studio or maybe even an investor
Hmm. Okay.
with that. Um, you know, I mean, it is kind of daring to say, "Oh, you should have put a warning, in essence, a trigger warning on this movie because it's so violent." It's kind of a daring strategy. But
Y-
wouldn't you think that you could argue the R rating functions as that?
yeah, you certainly could. And besides which, there's no credible research anywhere that backs up a causal effect of media and violence.
Oh yeah, yeah. Whether you're looking at movies or video games,
Or
even
comic books from the old days, or, you know, rock music, or whatever it
Elvis's
is.
pelvis.
Yeah.
But yeah, he tried to argue it, and there was one court that didn't initially laugh him out of there.
Hmm.
They let him go on, but it was, I believe, Louisiana's highest court that ultimately said no, the First Amendment precludes that.
Good.
So you have nothing to, stand on with that, which is exactly what they should have said,
Yeah.
because it's complete and utter bullshit to say that you need to put a trigger warning on there because somebody might do that.
Well, just as we were talking about Starkweather, who knows what triggered him? How you going to
Oh
warn?
yeah.
How you? I mean, how would you put a trigger warning on something for a guy like that?
Oh, and most definitely. Are you going to put it on Rebel without a cause? Are you going to look at Mark David Chapman, The Catcher in the Rye?
Yeah,
It would be
exactly.
another one. You
A lot of lunatics like Catcher in the Rye.
know. Yeah. I've never seen the appeal much myself. I'm not a
No,
fan.
nah, meh.
But
I actually found a copy of Catcher in the Rye out in a farmer's field.
well, perfect spot for it.
I
Well,
guess.
no, I guess a better spot would be burying it, but burying it in said field.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. That makes me think less of John Grisham that he would try that.
Well, how good of a friend? Must have been a really good friend, I think.
I
Or
saw a couple sources that said that he was a good friend, but then a couple sources described Savage as, quote, an acquaintance of
well,
John Grisham.
something tipped him over the edge on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I have read The Client and I liked it, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Just that he would try that makes me think kind of less of him. Maybe
I
I'm not being fair there.
well, yeah, the problem is the whatever that the connection was, it had to be hella strong. Either that or just the concept of it pissed him off
Yeah,
that
that
they
or he was just being an opportunist that he saw, hey, maybe I can do this.
but he didn't need that, right? He
I don't
really
know. Maybe not. But yeah, and it's pretty interesting how I'm sure this other couple thought that they were going to get the criminal infamy of a Starkweather.
I mean I would argue that, do do Grisham novels make people want to be lawyers?
Yeah, that's another way of putting it.
um, no,
Yeah, man.
because
Uh,
the thing is that people want to have it both ways. When it's something they don't like, they say, "Oh, the media causes this to happen." But it's when it's something they're in favor of, they say, "Well, it's just a story. It doesn't do anything bad."
oh yeah, they cherry pick the fuck out of that
Yeah,
all the time.
I don't care for that bullshit. I don't think
Yeah, it's hypocrisy when you get down to it.
yeah,
People like free speech as long as it's not speech that annoys them.
exactly.
Man, I tell you, and I can't believe that I hadn't actually sat down and watched Natural Born Killers till maybe what, last Saturday.
Yeah,
I'm not a huge fan of Oliver Stone either.
I'm not either.
And like the Doors
Speaking of
movie,
LSD,
yeah, no shit. And like the JFK movie, I thought was terrible.
yeah,
Now the one that I did like that I think he did was The People versus Larry Flint was Oliver Stone, wasn't it?
I think it was. Let me find out here.
I did like that one. Also with Woody Harrelson. And I have to say, I liked Natural Born Killers more than I thought I was going to. You know, when you look at that movie, there is not a single shot that is stable throughout it. That
Oh,
camera is always moving.
that is exhausting.
Yeah. I actually had to take a Dramamine about maybe an hour and 20 minutes in because of that. But yeah, I thought it was a
Uh,
very good movie.
the Doors was weird.
Yeah. And I like Val Kilmer, but I didn't much care for that. And JFK, I don't know, just with
No,
the conspiracy theories, no.
I don't see his name as a director for Larry Flint.
Who was the director on that, DC? So I'm curious now. I can look it up too.
I was looking up Oliver.
I could check IMDb and just go right to the title. So I know.
Milos Forman.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, that's a good movie about free speech too.
Absolutely.
People versus Larry Flint. It's the same guy who directed Amadeus too.
Oh yeah.
Milos
Quite
Forman.
different. Quite different movies.
That it is. They're both high caliber though. Uh, yeah, Starkweather was, man, he was the first. And I said we were going to come back to it, so why don't we ask? Tell us in the chat. What do you
Yeah.
think about Carol Ann? Hostage
Or
or a criminal
partner.
conspirator? Yeah, or partner throughout this.
I'm gonna personally I kind of lean towards partner right now.
I think so too.
I
I
think a cunning partner who, um, this is a girl who knew how to play the part of the victim
mm-hmm,
when it was, to her benefit,
yep, that
and
could certainly be argued.
I think that she was, um, she didn't try to get away from the house, from her own fucking house for days.
No, no, she didn't. And in fact, Starkweather also said that she could have left at any time, was his exact quote. And
Well,
he
yeah.
also pointed out that he left her alone with the guns that they had.
So there you go.
But
She could have made a ruckus when the cops showed up.
yep, she could have.
All kinds of things that she didn't do.
She could have even tipped off her older sister
Right.
when he was behind the door.
Yep.
Something to that effect, anyway.
Or when he was watching the front door, sneak out the back. She knows this house. She would know how to, move around in it and, where to go, how to get out, things like
Oh,
that.
yeah. And we're not talking about a confined space either.
Right.
It's not like we're talking about an apartment with one door. We're talking about a farmhouse in Nebraska.
Probably 2 stories, right?
Yep,
So,
I believe so.
and he had to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So she could have, stayed awake while he fell asleep and snuck out. I mean, there's just so many opportunities for her to have made a break,
Yep,
but she didn't until the cops were right there.
absolutely. I wonder what ever came of her. If she's still alive or not.
Oh, let's see.
I didn't come across much about her now. She keeps, pretty low profile.
according to Wikipedia, there's no death record mentioned it for her yet.
Maybe she is still alive. It's
Presently
quite the
lives a private
case.
life in Michigan.
Presently lives in where?
Michigan.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Quite the case, definitely.
Yeah, I definitely think she was a willing participant.
At some level.
I mean, if you think about it, Zodiac, I
Mhm.
think wasn't it Zodiac where the who picked up that woman alongside of the road and she threw herself out of the car to get
With her
away
baby.
with her baby to get away.
Yep, it was.
She had hundreds of miles of opportunity for that.
Yeah.
So that's um, yeah,
Oh, a very good point. I'm receiving over my Facebook messages right now.
yeah.
Teenage girls are not known for making adult decisions. Keep that in mind.
It's true, and it's not it's not a slam on them. Um,
No,
teenage brains are still forming, um,
that they are.
and they are literally awash in hormones.
Hmm.
And learning to cope with that new flood of hormones is really what growing up is about. It's learning how to not go mad from having these chemicals sloshing around in your brain pan.
Yeah, adjusting to it all.
Yeah.
But yeah, that
And
nugget of wisdom
some are better
from,
at it than others.
yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with that, with the teenage girls not known for making adult decisions. That is
Yeah.
from our lovely news gatherer, who gathers the news for me for every show.
Oh,
But
awesome. Yeah, what's funny is nobody nobody but teenage boys likes teenage girls.
oh, this is true. Teenage boys and pedophiles.
Yeah, but adult women who have been teenage girls don't like teenage girls.
That's true
Sometimes not
too.
even their own,
Yep.
because they are madness uh,
It,
personified.
talking about that psychology side of it too. There's some people who have studied this, mostly shrinks and psychologists, who say that Starkweather and Fugate was what is called a folie à deux, the
That sounds
French,
French.
which literally what that translates to is a circus of two. But in psychiatry, it's a shared madness, a shared psychosis. And
So,
that's where, to
so,
me, it
so
just
does that
doesn't fit.
so does that imply that if they had never met, they might have been okay?
Mm, mm, Not necessarily, in my opinion. But I also don't see how the folie à deux applies here, because we pretty much know that neither of them were psychotic throughout this.
Yeah, but there is something about a what's the chemical term? There's a catalyst and a um, what's the other side of the catalyst? Um,
Oh, I can't even think of the word right now.
I know.
Um, but yeah, I mean, just because the folie is that way doesn't mean to imply that there's not something else going on. between the two of them, you know, where they would kill because of that. It just means to imply that there's a shared psychosis
Yeah.
when you talk about a folie. So there's also, it goes from folie à deux all the way up to folie à famille
Oh,
is the
really?
largest of them. Yeah. It's really interesting too because they've also seen the folie phenomena at work in pets even. Your pet can share it.
What?
Yep. They can share it with some certain cases. When their owner has it, the pet has it. But one surefire way to kill a folie when you know it's happening,
Break them
you can,
apart?
that's one way to do it. Separate out the person who started it, the
Ah,
head, essentially cut the head off,
yeah.
break them of their psychosis, and everybody else will be broken of it.
Well, wouldn't that be the definition of Manson?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could be.
Family circus?
Yeah, fully a family, not necessarily blood family.
Right.
And I
Um,
think you definitely could argue some psychosis was at work there.
but there are definite cases where two people come together and they form a kind of catalytic bond that
Hmm.
only those two people would create.
Oh, absolutely.
And that
More volatile together.
right,
Yeah.
that if they'd met almost literally anybody else, their troubles wouldn't happen. But because they met that one person, elements of their personality get, I don't know, set free or triggered or
Hmm.
something that, just wouldn't have come out otherwise. And sometimes it can be a really good thing, and sometimes it can be a really, really bad thing. Um, Fred and Rose West in, I think it was Manchester, England,
Hmm.
are an example of that. At least in Rose's case, um, many psychiatrists say that had she not met Fred, she never would have been a killer.
Wow. I mean, another one that came
I
to
mean, not
mind
a,
there
she wouldn't have been a
was,
good person no matter what. But
yeah, she's not an angel,
right,
but
but she wouldn't have been a murderer,
I was just thinking of Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole. I
right?
think they both would have been killers had they not met each other, but still meeting each other
Maybe
made
not
them
as
all the
successful.
worse. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I wish I could remember the book that I had that I read that was all about the Fuller. I loaned it to my psychiatrist and she actually passed away, so
Damn.
never getting that back. She was a
So
good doctor too. Really liked her.
that's
Did her
it's
residency at Mount Sinai in New York.
yeah. You get a good professional, you hang on to them.
Yep, absolutely. Let's see if I
Hmm.
can remember the title. I think we might have beat the hell out of Charlie and Carol Ann.
I do believe that is the case.
But
Okay, are we done? We're done.
I think so.
We kind of decided who we're going to do next week, didn't we?
We did.
And
I
that we're
think he is probably the most depraved one we're going to look at. This guy,
yeah.
in terms of what he did. I'm kicking around if I should say much more. I don't want to give it away. People have to tune in to
You can
find out just how bad.
you can say the name.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we could say that. Albert Fish in New
Fish.
York. One of the weirdest.
Yeah, lots of documentaries online about this guy.
Yeah. Lots of books on paraphilias written with him in mind too.
Yeah,
A
you're gonna.
lot of shrinks said he had a laundry list of them.
Jesus. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, all.